You know when you meet someone and everything clicks. And today I'm joined by Colin MacLeod, an accountant and musician from Edinburgh, Scotland, who was introduced to me by a new colleague and podcast guest, Helene Elka, a spiritual guide. And now I know you'll be wondering, what does an accountant and music have to go together? That was a question I had myself. But also, what does this link have to do with bioenergetic wellness, a topic that I typically hold for my podcast? Before meeting Colin, I would have had one answer based on my years of experience and education. But today, this is a new conversation. What happens when you get inside a fiddle tune, or a piece of music for that matter, and you connect to the energetic signature that it creates? Better yet, what happens when you focus on the spine and the frequencies of the vertebra and connect the spiritual aspects of the emotions in relation to the spine? What happens when you put all this knowledge together and the experience that results? So we've combined today the expertise of Colin's work with the expertise of my work. And today is going to be an episode of experiential learning. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. This is Season 2, Episode 8, Music from Inside the Fiddle with Colin MacLeod. Welcome, Colin. It is a pleasure to play today through this podcast.
Michelle, lovely to catch up. Thank you for hosting.
This is going to be so interesting for our listeners and our viewers, depending on which way that they're going to be receiving this podcast. So before we begin today, I want to invite all of the listeners and viewers to take notice of their posture before we begin. So let's turn the head from side to side and see what that feels like to begin with. So just notice how easy or how much range of motion you might have. Any crinks, crackles going on in the neck. Also, just what the muscles might feel like as you're doing that. And now what I'd like you to do is just lean forward as if you were going to reach down to touch your toes. And Paul and I are both sitting, so we're just going to lean forward and notice what that lower back feels like. And if you're standing, you might be able to notice what it feels like down the backs of the legs as well. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the breath. Just take a moment to notice where your breath is. Okay, so you may want to notice if it's in the upper chest, if it's shallow, if it's deep, if it's lower down in the belly, if the ribs move, or if you're breathing outside the body. Okay, now we're going to go back to those observations again at the end of our podcast. And I also invite you to just use those as reflections going forward as well. So to get our conversation off and running today, Colin, what have you brought in your mug of opportunity?
Well, this is the mug, and I'll just bring it around to the other side.
I love this, Phil.
So this is
oh my gosh.
The violin, the fiddle. It maybe looks like one at Sydney Harbour, only like really much smaller. And the notes, so I can sort of take a few notes of things. And I've actually got green tea in this cup, and it's a green screen background. And interestingly, when we were just talking about things beforehand, just looking at the colour green, and we've been talking about, the back and the 7 chakras, and green lines up with the heart, which I find really interesting because I teach people to play Celtic fiddle by ear, to play from the heart.
Exactly. And when we were talking about 2023 is the year of the rabbit, and the rabbit signifies spring and wood, and yin, the energy coming in. So we have some beautiful synergies with that. Let's take a look here. I actually added, I've got my studio mug. This is my studio is 35 years old. So what I did was bring this because I was thinking about when I first started to dance and first started to teach dance, I had no idea where this company was going to go. I had a vision of a dance studio, and dance has expanded into this incredible movement capacity. And so I wanted to kind of reflect that in the mug. And inside today is Merry Moments. So this is from our tea company, Cape Breton Tea Company. And this is all about orange, cinnamon, and apple, and also about what it means to jig the tunes with your feet or to jig the tunes with your mouth, and just to be able to celebrate in movement. So cheers. And thank you so much, Colin, for joining me on this podcast.
My pleasure, Michelle. And I'll just turn things around. There's always more than one way to look at things.
Exactly. Oh. All right. So I hope our listeners have taken the time to make their cup of tea and have thought about which mug they're going to choose. That always brings joy to my day. Okay, so let's go on a little journey through your background of music and accounting and your process of discovery. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Colin MacLeod, and I've been playing Celtic Scottish fiddle since probably the age of 7, and learnt classically through school. And the way that I sort of carried things on after school was actually to have the violin and the music just part of wherever I was in the world, wherever I've been, wherever I am. And I find that Celtic music really just pops up everywhere. And it's sort of like this recharge. You can go to a music session in Cape Breton or the US, Australia, Scotland, France, Germany, Austria, I should say. And in all these different places, there's something special about just being able to join in and join a community and be able to connect. And I think we've been talking a lot about connection as well. And the other side of the coin is I'm actually a chartered accountant as well, and I've worked and lived in Australia, the UK, worked in South Africa as well. So all these different places, it's sort of like, imagine taking yourself and going somewhere and just we talk about roots. We talk about, well, funnily enough, the root chakra as where can you, as in the base of the spine, but where can you actually start out in something, and or where do people put down roots? So music just helps to bring people together, and music for me has always been a way to recharge and connect with people, a way to sort of settle down whatever's been happening during the day, just to like get back into equilibrium again. And during the pandemic, I've been in the UK and spent a heck of a lot of time behind the computer, and the idea about what does this do for the posture? Is it possible to communicate with music over the airwaves or via Zoom? And that's what we're actually going to try out today. What sort of communication is there, and finding out just about how our backs and our posture, how important it is. And then, Michelle, we're having the conversation about, I think it's 7 chakras, like 7 points that go up the spine, and how, that sort of helps people to connect with the greater universe, the ether, as well as sort of be grounded, and, different ways, because we've all got, we all have, our life is full of adventures. And adventures yield different experiences for people. And that might sometimes mean that you shut off an area of your life because of a certain type of adventure or a certain type of experience. And what can be created to actually reopen it or re-energize that bit. And people, I've just been across in the US, connecting with some people, students who have gone through the Celtic Fiddle School's online courses and also some of the community colleges. And it's been really interesting just to see how much, how alive people are catching up again, connecting. So it's so special. And music just does that. It brings people together. And, when people emigrated from Scotland and Ireland over to Cape Breton, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they brought some of their culture with them. And the music might have been mouth music, or it might have been the instruments, sort of being very portable. And going across to the other side of the world, it's like having something of your culture there as a recharge, a place where you can actually recharge. People are going out having adventures like cutting down trees to clear woodland for farmland. And that's a big job. That's a heck of a big job. And the idea about ceilidhs, the idea about social gatherings where people get together, maybe talk about something that they know, the stories, and then the music, and then they have the dancing, the ceilidhs, and just how much that sort of revitalises. And that idea about connection is something which has really come to the fore, especially after the coronavirus pandemic. And it's really, really, I'll reach out to Maylin and say a big thank you for connecting us, because what you do as well, the idea about movement, different ways to get rid of the ups and downs of the day and just iron things out, or just, give things a good shake, or having a cup of tea. And it's so interesting to see tea appearing in so many different cultures, and I think you might be doing a podcast later on about Robert Burns and his connection with tea, because he was an ex-Iceman and he was around when the Boston Tea Party took place, and he had a few wise words to say about things, or maybe there might have been a minister whose wife got a silver teapot. But I won't give too much away about one of your future podcasts. But just the role of tea and the colourings as well. So that's a bit of background.
It's lovely. I'm sure that our guests can hear the passion and the depth to which you like to live and experience life, which is really interesting. And I had a conversation with a friend while I was traveling prior to Christmas, and I had said something about it's okay. I've fulfilled the things on my bucket list that have appeared so far, and I'm happy with all the things that I've chosen to do. And she kind of looked at me and she was like, "I've watched a lot of TV," was her response. And I was so surprised, because I thought she was a person that had been pursuing the things she wanted to do as well. And it wasn't. But when you talk to people who really dive into their life and go into the juicy parts of it and feel that power that does come from music or comes from dance, that just kind of, like you said, it rejuvenates, but also it just is who we are. I think it just brings such a richness to everything that we do, that the day doesn't just go by. The day's a full day, but it always has an enhancement. It always has this artistry piece to it. And that's why I feel blessed to be in the arts world. And I used to think I was an imposter in the arts world. How did I get to be the one on stage? How did I get to be the one doing choreography? Those are for those great masterpiece people. And it was like, no, it's for the everyday people who orchestrate the way they want their day to go, who choreograph how they want the synergy of the people they communicate with and collaborate with to come together. And so it took me a while to own that kind of titling, and to be able to feel comfortable saying, yeah, I'm one of those people in the arts world. And it's a rich place to be. It's lovely.
I agree, and it's lovely to be able to catch up, and thank you for hosting the podcast as well. And just the word tea, like when we think about key moments in life, there's 20, 30, 40, and it keeps going up. Just all these important events, and what letters, there's days of the week that actually begin with T, like Tuesday and Thursday. And, in a business, people have 11s, So this idea about relaxing or free-form movement, if somebody's been behind their desk for a while, 11s just means they actually get up and move, free-form. And being able to sort of choreograph your day brings focus to the front, intention. And the idea about, you can actually choose your outlook for the day. And a really, really great way starting off is to drink a cup of tea and reflect on what sort of a day you might like to have.
Exactly. And that's, thank you for saying that, because our company, Tea with Intention, intend to radiate. That is the impetus of that company, is to really reflect with your tea. And those teas have been combined by intentions in many levels, but also with affirmations to go with it. And it is a delight to choose your morning tea and then to sit and think, here's what I want at the end of the day, and here's where I want to be at the end of the day, and what I've already thought about going into my week, or what I thought about going into what my year looks like, for those people who like to plan for their whole year. Thank you for that segue. And also the idea of choreographing it, because we often think in terms of goal setting and intention and using that kind of languaging, but you really are, in artistry, you are choreographing. And then what does that dance of life look like when you bring it together?
And the words the affirmations are a powerful tool as well, because in choosing the words, if we choosing words of expansion, like possibility, that, we there might be a possibility of doing something, or starting on an adventure, and the affirmations help to support those possibilities.
So let's segue into where we want to go with the fiddle today, so our listeners get a way to taste what we've just talked about in words, but now we're going to be able to put it into experience. And I would like to bring forward, you and I explored a little bit the affirmations for the Body and the BioField card deck that I have. And this was put together by Tanya, Levy's artwork. She's a counselor at Nova Scotia Community College, but she's an incredible interactive artist, which is an interesting combination in itself, but another way of choreographing how does your day go. And we originally came together because of the spine, so you had talked about that, and we wanted to identify each of the spiritual, emotional impacts of each vertebra, because each vertebra has its own frequency and its own set of meanings, or our experiences in life in certain areas will be reflected by the status of those vertebrae. And I spent part of the pandemic really doing deep research into the spine and the spiritual aspects, and creating a lovely chart, which my students then said needed to be in an artistic form rather than in a bunch of words on a page. So it became a piece of art. And the artwork, Tanya and I put into a card deck that actually has 4 parts to it, because we've included the entire biofield, which includes chakras, but also includes the Har line and the Dantians from Chinese medicine, as well as what goes on in the auric field. So we have quite an array of things. So I want to share with our listeners today where you and I kind of have brought some ideas together for them to experience. So we cut the deck, and the first card that came up, and I'm just going to hold the picture up for anybody who's on the video, then you'll be able to see the picture. But if you can't see the picture, you can get a hint in this. Again, it's photographs of nature found in Nova Scotia, or mostly on Cape Breton Island. But the picture's been run through filters, so it doesn't quite look like just a photograph. Although on this one, you can see hints of trees in the bottom, but you have like an orb in the center, which has hues of blue, yellow, purple. There's purple at the top, and then there's like this burst of white that comes out of this orb. And then there's on the sides, there's some yellow golden hues, just for those people who might be listening, and they might be able to get some kind of vision around that idea. Now, on the back of the card is an affirmation. So I'm going to read this affirmation out. This is for thoracic 6, which is in kind of down the center of the spine between the shoulder blades. A grip that keeps the old in place finds peace in opening to respond to what else is coming toward us. Feel the acceptance and keep the grip as soft as holding a butterfly safely between the fingers. And this is reflective of the note of A. So the spiritual and emotional connection, we have the artwork, but we've also infused other intentions into the art. So it's not just the art. So I just wanted to share some of that. The spiritual and emotional connections of this point in the spine inspires the need to release so that you can receive, and the opportunity to douse the flames of frustration, abuse, or hostility that may be holding the self hostage from spirit. So for those unable to see this artwork, I just want to reflect again, you've got pink, yellow, purple, and white. And those are often colors in the chakras that more intuition and into the crown, ways of knowing, ways of developing intuition. So, Colin, with the magic that you have, what do you think is going to come into the fiddle? Is there a tune that comes to mind for you?
So there's one tune that there's a tune called Bonnie Bankery, which was written by Scott Skinner. He's sort of like the father of Scottish fiddle playing. And it starts on the note A, and then sort of there's progressive patterns. And for what you're saying, Michelle, it's almost like coming back and looking at a situation. It's like when we want to clear up something, it might be several iterations, depending on how deep we want to go, to sort of just have a look at a picture, we see like the different colours. Looking at something initially, I might only see one colour, but the more I look at something, the more that I maybe reflect on it, I might see different, see it for a deeper meaning. And when I think about that, I see with Celtic fiddle music, the patterns. The patterns will appear again and again in the same tune. And looking at one tune opens up this whole spectrum of possibilities for other tunes, depending on, how each note is, how we treat each note. And then that's the basis for how I look at other things as well. And so I should probably play the tune. Yeah.
And so what I'll do is invite people as they're listening. You can close your eyes, go within, feel where the music might want to move you, and then let the movement flow easily from you. So if you feel like you want to move in your shoulders, and again, Colin and I are sitting, so we have the chair, so you'll see my head moving around or maybe my upper body. But if you're standing, feel free to move. Eyes closed, eyes open, however you want to experience it, but allow yourself to get inside the tune and be a part of the tune.
And you might actually find something else popping in first.
Oh, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. I'm hoping the listeners got to experience the difference in what the body wanted to do between the way you set up the first opening and the way the lyrics all came into the mind automatically, and then where it wanted to go. And for me, like I was sitting in that warmth of the first tune, but then it was into the body of the second tune. But then when you started to go a little bit faster and you sped up, then it was like the feet wanted to jig. So it was like it took you like head, body, feet. I'm not sure what other people experienced from that. What did you experience as you were playing it?
Peace, calmness, and reflection for the first one. Mm-hmm. And that just felt right. That felt right, and it started on the note A, the open A string. And the one I'd sort of been thinking about was a tune called Bonnie Bankery. So it's almost like, right, we have this idea about what we're going to do, but actually put it to the side. Let's do this. So the first one felt right, and there was more flow to it. Like the idea about being open to the possibilities of a new year, being open, being in flow, and releasing things in a gentle way, knowing that it's part of the journey. And honouring the past as well, so that we can move forward. And at this time of year, there's so much energy for people to sort of just, like somebody signing up for a gym membership, or the goal setting, and it's a journey. It's a marathon rather than a sprint. And that tune was a bit of a sprint, Bonnie Bankery. And in order to honour so there was a sort of like a streamlining of movement, and if we want to do something, it's putting the focus in as to sort of the main goal. There's going to be all these distractions that come up during the year. I might have wanted to play with a longer bow, or but these are the movements that I'm sort of focusing on at this period of time. So the idea that we can actually, 30 days to form a habit, 6 months to seal it in. The idea about, maybe less is actually more. In a music session, I can actually play for longer when I use a smaller amount of bow. And that tune was an example of, one of the ways that I might play, because what you saw, the movement there, that is a sort of like an indicator of how I might approach my goals for the beginning of the new year. And, I can, maybe we can try, so this is a taste testing. What we're doing here is taste testing. So, pulling out another card, Michelle, I'll do something, I'll play longer so that there's sort of more of a flow. And the idea that finding your rhythm this year, finding the rhythm in the tune, and there it was sort of, it got faster because I felt to honour that tune, or it's to be played faster. And it's very sprightly, and it's up in the A and the E string, so it's sort of like quite a lot. And we were actually sort of just doing a slight New Year workout, to sort of just to sort of loosen up for the rest of our podcast, and accompanied by a cup of tea, because and tea is such a really it's a really wonderful way to help reflect as well.
Exactly. As you were saying that, I was thinking about the description of the affirmation, which is holding that butterfly loosely and the opportunity to let go. So as you were talking about the traditional way of thinking about changing a habit, is it's going to take so long for that to happen. But when you have intention and you know what your outcome is that you're looking for, that becomes irrelevant, because that linear passage of time is no longer what you're doing, because you're embodying what it is you want. There's no reason to hold on to any habit, because if it doesn't serve the goal, it no longer needs to be there. It just goes. And so it's a lovely way to start to transition that thinking about what we've been told and what science has shown us by observation and picking things apart, and going over to what is it you really want. Because if you really want something and you hold in the palm of your hand what you want, but you hold it loosely with that opportunity to respond, we needed a little bit something different than what you were thinking, even as you go to place that bow onto the fiddle, that's where you go, because intuition knows what it needs to get you to the goal. So yeah, it's so beautiful. Okay, so now as our audience is trying to reflect on all we just packaged into that one little piece, that was thoracic 6. So let's just take a look at what our awareness is now. So if you turn your head, notice what happens to your range of motion. And I'm always in awe when I do this, always. So for the audience, I'm not sure what you'll experience, but I'm sure Colin's going to agree just by the smile on his face. What happened to us when we were discussing what we were going to do with this podcast, the same thing happened. So when you go to turn your head, you have a different range of motion, but that range of motion is now integrated right through the spine. So as I went to turn my head, I could feel all the way down from my hip, again, because I'm sitting, and I was turning all the way through my spine to allow my head to turn. It was no longer isolated movement and just my head. You had the same experience, Colin?
Yes.
Okay. And so now if you reach down towards your toes, and just notice what that feels like. And yes, I've talked about thoracic 6, but it's like my whole shoulder cavity, I guess I would say. So the entire place where the lungs are sitting, it's just like it just opened. Nice big space, and it's no longer the constriction of what's happened in the last couple of days and all the celebrating that we've been doing. You had the same experience with your back as well?
I find I was able to sort of open up a bit more and just go a bit further to actually touch my toes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then if we go to the breath, so take a breath in. Notice what that feels like. So that is like the expansion is on the inside, but its fullness is to the outside. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I'm breathing more deeply. So previously it was sort of up here, and now it's sort of further down. And there's a more relaxed way of doing things. And ease.
And so as we were talking about, making that cup of tea, setting your intention, engaging in something that energetically is going to involve you, and you're now with ease and flow, deeper breath, the mind is a little bit clearer or calmed, and you haven't done much, very little, yet so much all at once. It's just so cool. Okay, so shall we pull another card?
Yes, let's go for that.
Okay, so we have cervical 7. And so this one, I'm going to hold up. Cervical 7, I'll read the affirmation. Oh, maybe I should describe it first. So Tanya will refer to this one as the turtle. That's the way she likes to refer to it. And it has the 5 element colors in it. I kind of consider this more like the pupil of the eye is what I see. It has these layers that kind of work their way out. And also about the structure of the spine or the spinal cord or the mirror of a cell. So if that helps for those people that can't see the card but are listening. There's red, white, blue, purple, green, orange, and yellow present. And the spiritual, let me not jump to there. The affirmation for this one is, the needs within our life may be met by our decision to let go and see all possibility that surrounds us. A little bit more of what we've already been talking about. And it's the note of B. And if we go into this, we go into the spiritual aspects of what's embedded in here. We've got peace, being supported and guided, as well as transformation from lower mind ideas to higher mind ideas. And then, Colin, you wanted to comment. Do you want to go ahead?
Could you repeat the affirmation again, please, Michelle?
Oh, yeah. The needs within our life may be met by our decision to let go and see all possibility that surround us. All right. Is there a tune that pops into your mind?
There's one that's called A Cup of Tea, which starts on B. So I'm going for the first note. So it's an Irish reel. And then I was thinking about another one that's a jig, that's called Paddy's Leather Breeches. So let's see how those go together, and let's see how it works out. And I'll tune up first this time.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. That took me right back to doing my Irish jig steps. Brought out the Highland dancer in me. Oh, beautiful. I'll share this with the audience so everyone will have whatever they experience. So I'm just going to share what I noticed, which was when you played the first tune, it was like a combination between a right and left side. And I know you and I talked a little bit about you being an accountant, but a musician means you're using right and left sides of the brain substantially equally, where some people may be more right-sided or more left-sided. It wasn't so much that the brain was engaged right and left side, but the whole body is, whatever you're doing on the right, you do on the left. And so it was like trying to create a balance. And if I think of the spine, it's not that it was spiraling the spine, but it was like shaking it up, putting the space in it and getting it to move around in ways that it might not have if people have been just focused kind of straightforward or in one spot or in one pattern. When you moved into the jig, that brought in the dynamics of the jig is like a down and an up. It has this spring in it that you can't sit still with it. And it's that, that lifting action, which is that propulsion that says, hey, you've been sitting still and you're not happy there. Get up and move. Go somewhere else and push off. Don't just think about it and then gently walk your way to the next piece, kind of hesitantly going, but like jump in, jump up, move, be dynamic. And then it was taking that right and left and kind of balancing it. Anyway, that was my experience. And then, of course, the Highland dancer in me jumped out. And I actually just felt like I wanted to flounce my hands. And then I was in a jig, you would have had a fist come up to do the break step. And I was thinking about that butterfly fist because I would have clenched my fists before because that's the way we were trained. But I was thinking about that butterfly fist and going, look at what I can do if I hold the space within and I create that opportunity. So, okay, I'll be quiet. That was my observation. Colin, what did you notice?
So thinking about the tune, the cup of tea, I could have started it. So that would be starting on the note A, but starting on the note B gives it sort of like a different outlook. So, we did, I think, A for the first one, and then we're doing B here by notes. So by deciding to do something, by choosing to start something in a different way, I'm actually creating a different timeline or a different projection path for, shall we say, just path for it. The interesting thing about that is it's actually there's three A, B, C. There's three parts to that tune, whereas normally there's only two parts. Normally there's two parts to a 32 bar reel. There's the A and the B. Sometimes you'll get it down to four, A, B, C, D. And so to have something that's different, and it's okay to have different goals, that they're actually different from last year, because there are possibilities. We're open to the ideas that, yes, we can. It's like, Bob the Builder. Yes, you can. Did he say that? And so that is just such a cheery tune. It's just such a cheery outlook. The bright outlook of the new year, the bright outlook of possibilities. And, you're in Cape Breton, and I'm sure there's been a few Cayleys around New Year, and I'm sure there'll be a few more, just to sort of maybe even early morning ones. I don't know if you have sunrise Cayleys there, just bringing that special oomph to the start of the day. And when we actually go through the year, we can have small bites, we can have small sessions, recharge sessions, and it could be a cup of tea several times a day, for example. And I'm sure you have a selection of tea that will help people to facilitate that, a range of tea, because there's different things that people want. People have different intentions, and so the idea that you can do things in small bites. Like, it's really difficult to eat a whole elephant. Excuse me, I don't eat elephants, by the way, but just take things a small bite at a time. And so with the idea about goals, splitting them down into small segments, into manageable segments that you maybe reward yourself with a cup of tea, or I'm sure Cape Breton has some absolutely fabulous bakeries as well, or even home baking. If I think about Cayleys and, people bringing some cakes and
biscuits and oat cakes, yeah.
Absolutely. or cheese, for example, just rewards, and sitting down, playing the violin, playing a tune. So the idea about the cup of tea, that's a celebratory tune. and then I went into Paddy's Leather Breeches, which again started on B, the first note on the A string, and the patterns that were there within the first part of the tune. There's only 5 notes, so that's a bit like your 5 colours, and you can do a heck of a lot with 5 notes with 5 colours. You know, there's a lot of possibilities there. So, you know, you might think you're choosing this goal to do something, but actually, when you choose one thing, there's a whole series of options that open up again. So it's like, choose one thing, then see what's available. And with the idea of maybe being consistent in the approach, so that you build your muscles for seeing, you know, your decision muscles, so to speak, and I think so that moving forward, you're anchoring in your learnings, you're anchoring in your growth, your personal growth, in what's happening. So, for example, with Paddy's Leather Breeches, the patterns keep coming back. They keep coming back in different ways, and I think it was probably the last note of each section. I was playing an open E, you know, as the second last note, and there I would have normally played triplets, but I was thinking, what are these triplets? So the idea, being open to the possibilities of maybe something slightly different, creating space for that. And so, because I'd anchored in the patterns before, I'm very comfortable with being open to possibility. And yes, something else came in, and again, you know, it's sort of like that move, that groove, just that dancing as well, and it's throwing things up in the air. It's revitalizing what's there. You know, you can look at things in a number of ways, and it's good to have change. It actually is, you know, I've seen that in organizations, and there's a lot of fear goes in, you know, with the change, but actually you see so much more. You know, things are opened up, the possibilities are just sometimes magical. So like that tune, anchoring in a few of the patterns, and then just, oh gosh, I can now go and play another set of tunes. And we talked about jigs, you know, the colour orange, and just that tempo, you know, I maybe played it slightly faster, but it was just what came to mind. And I was going to say, I saw Martin Hayes play in Australia, in Melbourne, Australia, and there's one particular tune where he moves his bow so fast that it looks like a hummingbird's wings, you know, and he's holding it, you know, when I was thinking about your butterfly hold, just how softly, you know, and it's really, it's so interesting to see how the techniques from one area of life can actually be applied to another area, that these skills are readily transferable, and the idea between the left and the right brain compartmentalizing what we do, be open to the possibilities that these skills are actually transferable, like the musician skills are transferable with, okay, I'll use my own accountancy, like the creativity, like different ways to do things. And that putting the fun back into life, putting the fun, and when we have that, you know, and that's why I'm saying, well, you know, your ranges of tea with different intentions help to sort of spark, you know, flavour the imagination, spark ideas. And I'm sure that, you know, combined with a sea view, or combined with a beautiful view, especially in Cape Breton on the island, you know, and it would be really interesting to see if people listening to this podcast might send in pictures of their landscape views, you know, what they see when they're having their cup of tea. It might be a hill, it might be the sea, it might be a mountain. You know, I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah. So those people listening, if you decide you want to send a photo in, then I invite you to send it either to info@dancedebut.com, or on the Facebook page, if you go to the Key to Health with Energy Medicine, and there you could send a message through there, I would be able to then post it up on that Facebook site, which would be excellent. And I can also link it across to Cape Breton Tea Company, and of course to Colin, so he'll be able to share with his audience as well. That's a great idea, Colin. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was thinking about one thing you said about, you know, a New Year's resolution, and you said, you know, what a goal you might have had last year. And there are lots of people who had a goal and maybe they didn't come to fruition the way they thought it should come to fruition. It may have materialized in a way that was better for you, and you might not have realized that because you were still back at those words. But sometimes people don't realize they've accomplished their goal, and they keep the same goal. So they keep holding on to the same idea, you know, health, prosperity, love, you know, in your everyday. If you already have that and you keep repeating that same phrase, where are you going to go next? Because you already accomplished that. So I'm just bringing that idea in that maybe you just have to look at it slightly differently, how it resolved itself to be what you had anticipated. And I was thinking about when I was younger, I didn't want to have a New Year's resolution. I didn't want to state I was going to lose so much weight, or, you know, I was going to finish something, because what if I didn't finish it? I like to get off on tangents. Maybe where I'm going is more rich than what I thought if I'd been linear. And so I used to say happiness always. And as you were talking, Colin, I was thinking about that is how I really try to live. Because even when something devastating happens, it is devastating and I can acknowledge that. But then I look at it for, now what do we do? Now how do we go forward? How do we bring, and sometimes, you know, you've got a lot of emotion around it and there can be sorrow and sadness. But when is it that you'll be able to turn your attention back to what everyone would say, which is living with passion, living with wellness? When are you going to bring it back to that? And then that's usually when I say to people, yes, that was a devastating thing that happened. And I'm not talking about someone passing away. I'm talking about just things in life. You know, now how do we go forward? What's another way to look at it? And everybody always shakes their head at me that I don't understand, or they want to be back at we think it should have gone this way. You know, we think there was a wrong decision. And it's like, well, there might have been, but how do we go forward? And it's the same with that resolution kind of decision-making process. Did you really see what you had asked for and worked towards? And are you going to just stay in that same space and repeat? Or can you actually say, hey, now that I'm in this position, where do I want to go? So I know there were a lot of ideas in there, but it's been, you know, this time of year, there's so much happening. And since I met you, Colin, the richness is just like zoomed up. It's just like, wow, magnified. So, yeah. Okay, should we try another card?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And the last one, I realized I said cervical 7, but I didn't say where it was. So that is at the base of the neck. That's the last vertebra before you start down the main part of the spine. So in the back. So what you might want to do before I cut that next card is now turn your head and see if that changed from that last bit of music, and also all the reflective conversation we've just had. I'm almost all the way around now.
I've got less cracking. I've got less cracking. Yep.
Awesome. Range of motion different?
Yep.
Yeah. I was like, I could just keep turning. And then the interesting thing going forward was I actually bent my head first in order to go down. Whereas before I was like holding my head when we did the first one, and I actually didn't let my head roll, which I didn't realize till just now. So that ability to roll down the spine is now there. And I had talked about that get up and go and bringing that through. So I find that fascinating. It actually is there. Okay, so let's move to the next card. So lumber 2, which is here. This is your now. This is your space. All that is present, and all that is possible is available. Keep the circle of faith collected in love. And this one is the note of D sharp. Not an easy scale to start on. But anyway, I'll leave that for you as the music aficionado. What I'm going to describe, though, for the picture on the front, I kind of see a tutu. I see a costume when I look at this one. Some people see wings, and they might see more of a butterfly. So just to try to describe for those people who can't actually see the picture. There are colors in here. We have pink, yellow, blue, purple, white. So just to give you an idea there. This one is a connector. D sharp is a connector between C and D. So in terms of chakras, you have root and sacral chakra. Root would be the note of C, sacral chakra would be the note of D. We have D sharp. I'm sorry, we have D sharp. D sharp is between D and E. Let me say that again. Sacral to solar plexus coming into the middle of kind of the stomach area. So the connector D sharp is between sacral and solar plexus, and the connector happens through the back part of the spine. Now, in this regard, that's in terms of chakras. In this regard, we're talking about lumbar 2. Lumbar 2 is below, you've got your waist, and thoracic 12 is kind of where the arch in your back is. And then you start into the sacrum, which has more cartilage and not as much mobility as the rest of the spine. So 1 and 2 still has a little bit of movement in it. And then 3, 4, 5 tends to be infused or fused together. So this one still has a little bit of flow, but it's going to be on the lower part of the back. Okay. What is infused into the picture? This is chakra 13. It's the yin of energy. So that's how we bring energy in and then how we offer it space within us. It's also the feminine left side with a right brain piece, which is our creative endeavors. So those are the reflections you can kind of bring into what you're doing. This is your now. This is your space. All that is present. All that is possible is available. And keep the circle of faith collected in love. All right, Colin, what's your magic got?
So, again, I'm sort of keeping with the piping, and I'm thinking about a tune called the Atholl Highlanders. And normally it would be starting on the E, but when we go from the D sharp, gives it sort of like a nice set of possibilities. And looking at, like the frequencies, because I know that the chakras relate to frequencies as well. Like the note C has its own frequency, D sharp, A. And thinking about looking at the merry dancers, the Northern Lights, and the idea about when we look at something in more depth, like through a more powerful lens, like a camera, it's so beautiful. It really is.
the dancer in me. If I'd had a nice big space behind me, I would have been up and dancing through the steps. It was that was interesting because my head went to the steps that would match the tune. And that's just, rote practicing of many years. But then I started to think about the movement and not really so much think about as my conscious thought, but I was trying to experience it with my body. And I realized that music takes you in, and that was almost the dance step kind of goes in, but then there's always these lovely kicks that happen, which take you out. And that out is your expansion, but also it's your connection to those around you and outside. So from a visual perspective, you're in and then you're out. And it keeps inviting the person watching you to come into your space. From the inside of the dancer, it's that in and then that outreach, and then the in and then the outreach. And if we take what we've done with the other two experiences, it also began to kind of make a circular motion of that in and then that out, and that in and then that out. And the dynamic of the jig from the last time, which was take it up and down, take it, with steadiness down into the floor, but also expanding. It was a beautiful journey that kind of culminated everything. How about for you?
Well, that was the Atholl Highlanders, and so that tune was called the Atholl Highlanders, and starting on the D sharp sort of gives it a very different feel, rather than an open E, and it's almost like, gosh, what's going on? And the idea that each New Year comes around once a year, so there's a chance to refine goals more and more. As we say, there's an up-leveling that can occur during the year, and we can look at something that we want to do, in a year's time. The idea that we can actually look ahead with intention to, say, our future self, like who can I be in a year's time? Who might I be in a year's time after achieving these goals? And then we can bring that knowledge right back to now. And the idea with the tune of, because of the patterns that are in the tune, we can move forward. We can move forward with confidence. The idea about connection, the Atholl Highlanders only appear once a year at, I think it's the private army of the Duke of Atholl. So they appear at the Highland Games there in May each year, to do their stuff. So imagine only seeing the Atholl Highlanders once. So this goal only appears once during the year. But the fact that somebody's come up with this absolutely beautiful tune called the Atholl Highlanders that people throughout the world can enjoy, Cape Breton to Nova Scotia to Scotland to Brittany to Galicia, for example, or Australia, and that everyone can put in their own interpretation. They can do the different dance moves, different movements, and for each of us, we have goals that we might want to do at the beginning of the year. That each of us will have our own style as to what that might be. Like if you'll have other people playing the tune, and instead of doing this, they might do, or they might do, and then so there's a uniqueness to each of us in the way that we might approach life, and I think that's pretty special. And even the cup of tea, I'm going to put the violin down, and the idea about, if I do this, you see the full beauty of the picture, the violin, the notes, and it's green tea again with a green background that I found out was in line with the heart chakra. So green is the colour of the heart chakra. If I do this, you get a totally different picture. Mm-hmm. To me, this one's more interesting. the possibility with all these notes coming together, and there's all these different notes, and there's so many possibilities. Like with the tea, I mean, you know, you've got your tea infused with the intentions and the colours as well, you know, like the orange and the cinnamon. Rooibos, I think, is that coming anywhere?
Yes, and quite a few of our blends is rooibos. Yeah.
And, you know, that the idea about mixing that together and just what will happen, what are the possibilities, and just it might actually be quite fun. It might be quite fun. And one of the musical evenings, I think you mentioned recently that there was a chance for a ceilidh at your house recently, you know, and the brightness there, and, you know, the jive and the energy, the magical chatter, you know.
Yeah.
And so bringing something in to infuse that, like the music coming in, and just, to me, that's a really happy tune. And the Atholl Highlanders could keep matching to that. I could keep marching to that tune, or keep moving to that tune, because it's just got such a... You just got to move. You just got to move, and it's got a groove.
Exactly.
It's got a groove. And, you know, that D sharp, that je ne sais quoi of that introduction that just opens up the, you know, hearing more than one note at the same time. You think it's going to go like this, but in fact it sort of comes together like this and then just moves out. It's the way that you know, the notes are on a page, and then somebody adds something of themselves, their own ingredients. They add something of the magic of their outlook, their experience, and the richness. Like when I'm playing that tune, I like to maybe emphasise different notes. Or maybe from my own background, from classical background at school, like the vibrato coming in, or just different ways to decorate the notes. The idea about, you know, Taifu came up with the circular tea bags, and then you still got the string, and I see some people wrapping the string around their cup handle in order just to, you know, make sure that it doesn't go to the bottom of the tea, and they can use it again. You know, they can have more than one cup of tea. And the idea that, you know, these goals are progressive. Keep checking in, keep having your cups of tea, because they'll yield the jewels that they will yield will be different on the journey. There's a magic. There's a magic to it all. There really is.
And for those people that are listening, couldn't see what Colin did, at one point when he said it could go like this, he actually had two fists that he was going to head bump together. And then instead he took his fingers and then opened them up, so the hands came together and didn't quite touch, but they came together almost touching palm to palm, and then expanded out like wings expanding and then opening. So I just thought I would share that, because it's a great visual to keep in mind of whether you continually butt heads or come back to the same place, or whether you choose to take that journey where you recognize both pieces and then see where that expands and takes you to.
So if you could hold your hands up as well, Michelle. So instead of coming like that, it was sort of coming like that together. So if you could go a bit higher. That's it. Yep. And then
So you're. So I had mine closer down near my heart, and you were bringing it up throat to head almost, and that coming up out of the crown. Yeah.
And the idea about, is it intuition? And the connection there opening up to the universe or the bigger picture. Fireworks.
And I wanted to know too, like if you look at the picture on your mug, you've got the scale on there, but it actually looks like a matrix, the way that they set the scale up. So instead of the lines going across, which would be typical, they've actually got the lines in both directions, which would kind of be like what you have on a guitar or the fret on the violin. But it's a matrix, so the musical notes are sitting on the matrix. And so if we think about all the interactions and connections in life, the notes enrich all those areas. It's such a beautiful mug. It's really incredible. And then I was thinking as you were talking about, on the back side of mine, I had originally, which style of dance that I teach. So it's got Highland tap, Cape Breton stepping, ballet, jazz, preschool. So that was, the focus was on those different genres of dance. But if you look at the other side of my mug, I've got a little man on the mountaintop. And then what does this say about my company over the list that I have on the other side? There's so much more involved in what's going on in my logo and what I encompass. Yeah.
There's a fluidity to it. And there's a warmth as well, a warmth of connection there. And the stories that are behind the tunes, like I think you've got Paul Cranfield, who's doing a marvellous job of collecting, Cape Breton tunes, Jerry Holland, Brenda Stubbart, and the story behind this mug is I got it as a gift for playing with a friend, playing to somebody on their veranda, and because they couldn't make a special occasion, so we went to them, something like that, and just how magical, like the memories that people will have having cups of tea and having the conversations with intention.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something right throughout the year. The new year is the beginning of the year. The conversations throughout the year are themselves really special.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know you and I could keep talking and talking, but I think if I bring one more idea in mind that our listeners may want to be involved in, my sister last year had given us a memory jar for Christmas. And so we have spent all of last year filling that jar with all of the memories we wanted to just acknowledge. And so my mom sent me a list yesterday of what her year looked like through the lens of all those memories. And she did it by month. Mine, I didn't date them, so they just went into the jar. So they'll just be wherever they were in the year. But hers were all chronologically organized. But it was really interesting to go back and look at some of those pieces and then to reflect on what was most important. So in one event where I might have written it one way, she wrote it a completely different way. And the lens that she wrote it through and the love that my mom has. So I just wanted to just reflect on that little piece in case the audience would like to think about that. So let's bring this to a close. And Colin, perhaps you and I can develop into some other conversation for another time. And we often finish with recommending for people a way to open up their body. But today I'm hoping that people got that all the way through in their experience, and they'll take a little bit of time to go back and check in with the body and see how it's changed from the beginning of our podcast. You've been listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, and this episode has been sponsored by Dance Debut, providing movement programs to create a flourishing lifestyle, while achieving your goals and ambitions and enjoying the activities on your bucket list. And also the Cape Breton Tea Company. And Colin, thank you for bringing in Tea with Intention, my other company, because then we could highlight that as well. And you can find cbtcompany.square.site and Dance Debut Inc. You can find me on Linktree at Dance Debut. And Colin, would you like to share how people can find you?
If you go to CelticFiddleGuru.com, and that will give you the opening to all the possibilities, online Celtic Fiddle teaching, maybe a tour of Scotland. And so CelticFiddleGuru.com, and or Facebook, hashtag Celtic Fiddle Guru. There's also an Instagram account, hashtag Celtic Fiddle Guru. And I'd love for you to be in touch and to be able to continue the conversation. And thank you, Michelle,
Beautiful.
for hosting.
Thank you so much, Colin. And I wish you the best as you go forward with your goals for this year, and also for the expansion of your music, because really to get inside the tunes has been such an incredible gift. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share that kind of knowledge with our audience and let them experience your music as well.
Thank you, Michelle. And I love your view with the movement and the seeing things from a complementary angle. It's really, the insights are really pretty strong and very welcomed.
Thank you. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.